thing about the thing about winning the lotto is I thought about that because apparently like there's some like all these people in my local 7-Eleven have been buying tickets the last 3 days, and you see like all the folks, most of the folks who get the lottery,
Yeah.
in 5 years they say we don't know who our friends are. People became moochers, like our wives left us. They end up like going bankrupt. So I think it's one of those things that was like fool's gold for the most part. I don't know if it'll get you happiness, but if you use it wisely, you don't let it to like get it to your head, then I think you and I are at this stage in our life where we could like put it in investments and like make sure our kids go to college, and then I'd buy some Lego sets and you'd expand your studio. We'd be
have all the Legos.
I don't. It's dude. Legos are so expensive.
I know. I was so pathetic when my kids were little and they want to play Legos. And in case people don't know, Waj loves Legos, and so do his kids, and everybody does, really. I hope, unless you hate America. But they were so expensive. I said on the radio at Sirius, I said, "Oh God, they're so expensive. I just can't justify paying whatever it was, $150." And in the mail, I don't know how they got my address. Someone sent me a gift card to Lego, a listener.
That's loyalty.
Yeah.
That's listener loyalty. That's amazing.
And I wanted to pay it forward because I thought it was so nice. I was like, you know what? I should give this to somebody else who needs it more than me, because I actually can afford Legos, and I sound pathetic for even saying that. But I didn't. I bought my daughter a castle.
Yeah, as you should have. And then you gained husband equity and dad equity for like 3 days.
Yeah, an hour and a half.
Yeah, an hour, 90 minutes. And even your wife is like, did you do the dishes? You're like, no, you Lego buying.
So there's still Legos out there that you don't have that you
oh man, it's so, look, Legos are, it's an evil company because they cater to grown men for the most part. And like,
really?
I think so. I think the reason why they're evil, because look, I'm building a Mos Eisley like Cantina set. A kid doesn't know what the F that is, right? It costs like $300. I bought it like 6 months ago. And so obviously they're catering to us and say that, so they know like we're gonna be like, just you go inside and you see a Batmobile from 1989. You're like, this is amazing. I need this Batmobile. Right. And then you see the price tag and you're like, I'm gonna go bankrupt. My wife's gonna leave me. And they just keep coming out like increasingly, especially during the pandemic, because apparently a lot of people got into Legos, they got into puzzles, they were stuck at home. So they're increasingly pandering to us middle-aged men with wallets. But I have to be super judicious. So like apparently all these amazing things are coming out on August 1st. I can't buy all of them. If I had FU money, I'd buy all of them. But like I can't. There's like an Infinity Gauntlet and there's all these Star Wars ships, and I'm like, if I bought all this, my wife would leave me. I'd be bankrupt. You
talk a lot about Legos, but I've never actually seen a picture or video of you playing with them or putting them together. I would like to see that. I'd like to see you with your Legos at some point.
I can show you. I show you the completed sets because I think I
still know that you did that.
But who else is going to do it in my home?
I just want to see you doing it. That's all I'm saying. You're constantly creating an image in my mind of you sitting on the floor and you're in your pajamas, and I feel like you have like cars on them, like they're little boy pajamas. And
who doesn't have boy pajamas during the pandemic? If you're wearing pants right now, you're failing at life.
Yeah, no, I'm not wearing, but I don't actually have adult. I don't think I've ever had adult pajamas.
It's like mangoes. Everyone knows it's mango season. I'm eating mangoes. Do you really need to see me eating a mango? Like
I do. Yeah, I do. Mangoes.
You know what happened? You know Piper Perabo. We're so old. So Piper Perabo, great actress, who's also an activist, but she was in Coyote Ugly, right? So here I am. This is how weird my life is. I started in Coyote Ugly 20 years ago. I think she'd be okay with me saying that, people of my age group, we found her to be aesthetically pleasing at that age.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And she's a great activist. And so we're following each other on Twitter. And then she randomly hits me up. She goes, I love mangoes. Where can I get like these Pakistani mangoes? So where she is right now in filming, I got a hookup for her. I'm like, she's never going to go. And then she just sends me a photo with this big ass crate of mangoes and then sends me like a tweet saying, they were so delicious. I love them so much. Thank you. And then she tweets it out and she says, everybody find your Pakistani mango dealer. It's a once in a year experience. So this is my life now, man.
Awesome. That's awesome. And your Piper Perabo impression is perfect. You nailed it.
This is exactly how she sounds.
She sounds exactly like that.
Like a masculine 40-year-old Pakistani male.
The probably one of the coolest things that my career has afforded me is that I actually, while at SiriusXM, at first I didn't really interview like a lot of actors and actresses, celebrities, because that wasn't the type of show I was doing. And as the show kind of developed, and they wanted me actually to do that, so fine, I started interviewing more of those type of folks. But I did get to interview all of my childhood like TV crushes, all of them. Winnie Cooper,
Oh,
Her name is Danica McKellar.
who's brilliant, by the way, like a brilliant mathematician.
And really nice. Like she does like this whole thing about teaching kids math and don't fear
Great.
math, and math can be sexy, even whatever it takes, as far as I'm concerned. And like I talked to her off the air about how my daughter was kind of struggling, didn't like it, and she like gave me her number or her email, whatever, and she's like, if she wants to, reach out, which I never did, but it was so genuine. Also, so her, Alyssa Milano,
Yeah.
Jewel.
You have like a whole list. That's what people don't realize. Like, it's like I just confess this to my wife. I'm like, an actress or a model who I had a crush on follows me, and they direct message me, and I'm very happy. And she just says, like, I'm proud of you. Well done. Well done.
Yeah,
sir.
but it's like, it's the idea that you like had a crush, which a harmless crush on, and that everybody did. They sold.
Everyone had a crush on Alyssa Milano, right? It just
for sure, and that she now knows that you exist is a massive deal. It is. It just makes you feel.
And they reach out to you, and you're like, "What's happening?"
Well,
and then your wife says, "How come you haven't done the dishes?" And then right then you're brought back to earth.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious. That's the best marriage right there.
But the best part is, some of these. So it's because we live in a more flattened world where there's access to literally our high school crushes within a direct message, right? And we are someone in the media. It's so interesting because it's so surreal. Like I kind of get used to it, but I'm like, oh wait, Alyssa Milano emailed me, and I emailed her back, and then Piper Paraboo is now taking mango suggestions for me, right? Like, it's just so strange that what would seem inconceivable for you and me growing up like pre-internet, now you can like reach out to someone for better and for worse with a tweet, and they can. And I feel bad for them also, because imagine how many freaks they get, like how many stalkers, how many hate mongers. Not us, of course. We're civilized professionals.
Of course,
who maintain.
The interesting thing has been how over the last few years, the folks who are kind of cultural and political commentators have gained a type of celebrity status that only actresses and athletes had, to the point where actors and athletes who have now become more involved in that, because nobody can sit on the bench anymore. Obviously, some people can. And they now look to people like you, and you have become that. And it's an interesting thing, because we've always said we should be celebrating. We shouldn't be celebrating having, actors and athletes and paying them so much money. It should be these people, and someone like you getting that kind of, credit and attention, respect. I think that's great. I think it's fantastic that the world has pivoted on that, and that someone like this successful actress looks to you for ideas, advice, leadership, inspiration, which you've been doing for people for the past several years. I think that's great. I love that.
I mean, it's wild, man. The thing is, we've talked about this before, is that, when you did your radio show and you're still doing your podcasts, and I write, and you sit there and you live your domestic life with your wife and your kids, and you go do the dishes and you build your Lego sets, and, you pay the bills, and you sit there and you go, oh, no one knows me, because we don't have delusions of grandeur. Not that we're self-deprecating. I think we are, but we're not like arrogant blowhards, right? You sit there and go, oh, I have no idea if anyone's reading anything. And then you write something, or you put out some product in the world, or a podcast, and you have no idea how many people it reaches, who it influences, who's listening to it, whether it be someone who's a girl in Indonesia trying to like find her identity, or like a famous actress that you had a crush on. Just so it never ceases to humble and amaze me. Like it's remarkable to me, because for us, you sit there in your shed. I'm sitting here in my dad's study room that, my kids invade, and you live our life, and you have no idea how many people you could touch. And then it comes to that Peter Parker quote, Spider-Man quote, who quotes Voltaire, with great power comes great responsibility, assuming we have any power.
Well, you do. I mean, I think we do, and people in the public sphere, and in the conversation, which we both are, and you're by far one of the favorites, and always have been, as long as you've been joining me, of people who listen to the shows that I've done. Which brings me to the point that I had ghosted you since you gave me an advanced copy of your book. And I ghosted you because I hadn't sat down and read it. And there was literal guilt, like probably every day, because I'd see a tweet or article of yours or appearance of yours on TV. And every time I'd see you, I'm like, this is become one of my closer friends. I admire him. Why am I not reading this? And the truth is, because I'm reading constantly, and I hate reading, and I have to, I like listening to stuff, because my eyes, here it is. I hate my eyes on a screen. I want to hold the thing. And because my eyes are on a screen so much, I avoid it as much as I can. And I've just felt so bad that I hadn't read the advance. I was so honored that you gave it to me. So I just avoided contacting you.
Yeah, I just thought you became racist.
That too, but not towards you, like only towards the ones I don't know.
Oh yeah, the Muslims who you don't know, you're like, I don't like them. No,
like, you're Muslim. No, like I like the ones I know.
Yeah, the ones that I don't know, I am terrified of. Also, I mean, I barely like myself. I asked Sarah, my wife, I'm like, Pete started inviting me. I think I offended him. Maybe I should reach out to him. And then my wife's like, the more sensible of the two, she goes, I just think he's really busy. And then I'm like, oh yeah, he's probably just really busy.
Dude,
and
it's not like, listen, like I've said this obviously privately, and I've said it publicly. I do anything with you. I want to host a show with you. I reached out and said, let's host a show. I love talking to you. You're an amazing guest. It's funny when you think why someone is or isn't doing a thing. And it was legitimately 100%. I had not read this book, which you poured your heart and soul into. And I felt so bad about that I finally just, like, you tweeted something, somebody tweeted us all, a bunch of us over the weekend, and you're like, I haven't even talked to Pete, he's whatever, avoiding me. And I was like, yeah, I am, because I feel like I've let you down. That's why. Isn't
it amazing? You made a good point in the sense that, like, what goes inside in our head with the assumptions that we have about people, why they're reaching out or why they're not reaching out, sometimes is so off the mark, because out of the 14, if someone said, give me 14 reasons why you think Pete hasn't emailed you, I would have never even thought that. I would have never even thought that it's utter crippling shame. That I'm like, so what about the book that I gave you, Pete, that I only gave 5 people? Like, I can't read.
The easiest thing to do for me now with the podcast is to know who this audience likes regularly. And there's a handful of people that they love, and you're one of them. And
well done, audience. Good taste.
Well, the other thing is the people who you respect the most, their opinion matters the most. And like one of my very best friends, probably my best friend, David Campbell, who is this big deal down in Australia, hosted a Today Show, singer, performer. He's like, I can't listen every day. My podcast comes out every day. He goes, but I would never, ever miss an episode with Waj. She's simply my favorite. So his opinion matters like the most to me, my wife's, people. And so it's like, no, I'd have you on every goddamn day. But I just...
David is now my favorite Australian.
Yeah.
And I actually know 2 other Australians.
You know Chris Hemsworth is Australian.
Yeah. I don't know him yet.
Would you though, if you had to? Is he your gay card? He's mine.
I admire his muscles, because I saw that photo that apparently was the final shot that they just finished wrapping the newest Thor, and I'm like, dude, how does he get one of his muscles is like as big as me? It's amazing. I was very impressed.
Sexy guy.
Yeah, I would give thumbs up. If my wife left me for Chris Hemsworth, I'd be like, that's understandable.
Yeah, well, of course, that's a whole different situation. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, we always can do whatever, but one of the things I definitely know I want to ask you is, and I don't mean to make an assumption, but it seems like the hatred and fear of Muslims and brown, like religious people, religious Muslims at least, has changed to some extent. Like there's less of it. There's certainly been less foreign terrorism, hardly any at all in America. But I wonder what your vantage point is, being a public person moving through space in America. How are the comments, the threats? Because you sometimes share the hatred, and it's still really ugly, and often based on the color of your skin and your religion. But like, what is it? What's happening in your world in terms of the hate that you're feeling? Has it changed at all in the past couple of years?
Pick it up on a thread that you brought up just a couple of minutes ago. When people like us, we do what we do in the media. You sit there and you go, I'm just like a dad, and you get surprised when you get the good, but sometimes you get surprised when you get like this avalanche of hate. And for better or worse, I guess it's a compliment that I know I'm doing something right, because I have increasingly become a favorite target of like the Daily Caller and Fox News and their right-wing pundits, right? Like I'm really getting under their skin. And so you could tell a lot about the pulse of the latest racism based on the hate mail that you get. And I get a lot. And so what I've been getting is, still I get stuff with Muslims, but has a little bit less to do with me being a Muslim and more to do with the skin tone and being the son of immigrants. Because I get hit with a lot of go back, you camel fucker, go back, you know, piece of shit. But so it's like a mix. It's like a nice bouillabaisse of like Islamophobia and anti-brown racism. But the core of it has always been racism, right? The core of it has always been bigotry. And I think that there's still Islamophobia, which I think, if you don't like the word Islamophobia, fine, anti-Muslim bigotry. I don't care. I have no patience for this type of mental linguistic gymnastics. You can still get away with it, right? The thing is, like, you will not get fired for being anti-Muslim bigot. You'll get like some slaps on the wrist. It's still very acceptable, even on the left, in my opinion. However, what you have seen is a shift in the sense that since we have seen more, I think, mainstream Muslim representation in politics and in media and in social media and when it comes to characters, right? I think you're seeing more and more people say, oh, there are different types of Muslims. Oh, Ali Velshi is a Muslim. And you see more like Ali Velshi and Fareed Zakaria, who are more secular. They're coming out and they're owning their Musliminess, right? They're like, hey, when you guys are for a Muslim man, reminder, we're Muslim. And I think, you know, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, like, I think more and more of this coming out has kind of changed perceptions in the past few years. And especially the thing I'll say is all the stuff that I've been warning about for the past 20 years, there's something positive about the Trump administration in the sense that a lot of people are on the fence. And I'm talking about progressives. Oh, you Muslims, you're always whining. Oh, Muslims, get over it. Oh, we elected Obama. Once they saw Trump and Trumpism and the Muslim ban, they're like, huh, you guys were onto something? Huh. Maybe we don't live in a post-racial society.
I'm surprised. Why do you think that? What has informed that opinion that people, you know, have shifted as a result of those policies and those attitudes and the election of Trump and everything that came with it?
You saw with the murder of George Floyd, which brought out about 15 to 20 million people on the streets. Mm-hmm. And you saw a lot of folks who were, you know, those, by self-admission, they said, we always thought, you know, there was these racial hustlers and you guys were always talking about political correctness and we voted for Obama. And, you know, we thought you guys were always complaining. But then this made us really wake up and say, huh, these darkies, they're not just whining about, like, you know, police brutality and Islamophobia and, you know, anti-immigrant xenophobia. This is real. And when we saw like George Floyd getting choked to death, and when we saw Donald Trump and like the rallies and crowds chanting, send her back. Wow, you guys were onto something. And sometimes what happens is you need a crisis, you need something ugly, you need something violent, unfortunately, for people to acknowledge the stench that was there under their nose, but they were privileged enough to either ignore it or avoid it.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah,
and that's what happened.
I see what you're saying. It's like the ubiquity of cameras. Everybody's got a camera, and so you now have videos of these horrible things happening, and then social media share. It also can backfire because people become afraid of things that they shouldn't be, like kidnappings and things like that. But
right.
But you see, even with COVID, you can see people literally dying on a ventilator and using FaceTime, and then the election of Trump, and you can see all the ugliness that comes with it. So if you lived in a, as most of us do, in a very self-segregating world,
that's right.
And you only heard people saying, this is what's happening in our community, you didn't necessarily believe it. A lot of people didn't. And you can't, because then you'd have to beg your lying eyes to tell you the truth.
That's right. Privilege is often blind to its own power and its own abuses of power, right? We say this, I can say that as a man. And so when you hear women, when you heard women saying, how come there are all these male panels? And, you know, if confession, because you're privileged and because that's how things were, you don't even realize the absence or lack. You're like, oh, this is how things were. And then you sit there, and now that you've heard it, it gets inside your head and you're like, oh, wait, that's another mantle. That's another mantle. That's another mantle. And then you go, oh, wow, the women, these aren't just these angry feminists who hate men and always complaining. These are women who are articulating a real problem that I was blind to see because I was so used to a certain narrative and a certain image based upon my privilege, right? Same thing happens when it comes to racism. What are these black people talking about? The police are always good to me. If you just follow their lead and listen to what they say, there won't be a problem. And then you see George Floyd literally being choked to death for 9 minutes as people are surrounding him saying this man's choking to death, and it didn't matter. They still killed him. And I think that type of rude awakening is like, wow, these black folks aren't just complaining. And then when you saw Trump literally do the Muslim ban and say these people come from shithole countries, send her back, they're like, oh, these Muslims. Oh, wait, the war on terror. And then when you see the war on terror, the policies literally come out and spill out in the streets of Portland, Oregon, where suburban whites are being mistreated by the police, where you see people being pushed and shoved to the ground. When it's happening to them, then that's the wake-up call. And it's sad that it takes violence and chaos for people to wake up, but that's been the same thing, man. Look at climate change, Pete. You got climate change activists for decades. The Inconvenient Truth came out like what, 20 years ago? Yeah. Al Gore sitting there in front of his a slideshow. And now finally you got people saying, we should do something about this climate changing. And now it might be too late.
Yeah, still not enough, and it's too late to ward off some of the most extreme probably circumstances that we're already seeing happening. But that's a great example of it. Your book comes out in January. You've got the cover, you got the art out, huh?
What do you think of the cover?
I think it looks fantastic. Go back to where you came from and other helpful recommendations on how to become American. It's so great. It's what I read the first 3 pages and I was dying laughing, and then I just lost it because it was a PDF. But I can't wait to get the galley copy and read about it. But what was the pitch? My poor agent's been waiting for 10 years to write a book. And I'm one of those people who feels like anytime you commit to like a long-term project, I need to have like a fire, a passion to do it. Like, I don't want to be those, this example. There are comedians who just write books as part of their brand. You know that, like their agent says, you haven't written a book yet. And they're like, I'll just write a book. And you could tell the difference between a book that is and a book that really is invested with thought. You know what I mean? I'm not going to name some names. I know names. Yep.
Yeah. And we both know names. And so this was a book that I'm like, if I do it, I really want to commit to it. And there was something about the pandemic and something about turning 40 and something about like my child's cancer that I felt like this was the moment where I felt inspired to write the story. But the whole, for me, was how do I crack the structure? Because I don't want to be like a navel-gazing memoirist, right? So how do I do it different? And I think the structure that I came up with, which you've read the first couple of pages, you saw the chapters, and I know you dug it, was like kind of this satirical, very sincere, but kind of funny self-help book, like a memoir as a Trojan horse through a self-help book. And you kind of the juxtaposition of go back to where you came from and other helpful recommendations on how to become American, like the slap in the face and the humor, the invitation and the rejection, right? That I thought would be a great vehicle to kind of summarize the feeling of being brown and Muslim, or literally anyone who's seen as an other in their own country, a citizen and a foreigner, a person who's asked to be loyal, but is also seen as a suspect. And how can I convey the dark humor of it all? I thought the title, the cover, and the structure that I chose finally then gave me the vehicle to relate some of these stories and these thoughts. And ultimately, I hope make it hopeful.
It's even the chapter names are really funny. Invest in hope, but tie your camel first. Elect a Muslim president, but beware of economic anxiety and avoid jail. What's that one
about? That's a story that you're going to find out about my parents who spent time in jail, both of them. And I've shared it. It's fine. People know it, but I've never shared it in depth. So that's a whole story about when you're both us and them growing up privileged in the suburbs, and overnight everything is lost and how everyone turns on you. And my parents, both of them got arrested in this insane thing called Operation Cyberstorm. And for 10 years, they fought the case. And so that was my entire 20s that no one knows about. And so as I was building my career, my parents were in jail and I was completely broke, but I decided not to share it. Not because of shame, because anytime someone asked me, I would always admit it, but only because I never wanted to use that as an excuse, a personal excuse to stop me from pursuing my goals. Does that make sense? Like you'd be like, my parents are in jail. I'm completely broke. I have no idea what's going to happen. I guess I'm just going to tap out. Instead, I kind of used that saying, even though this is my reality right now, I'm going to go all in and pursue this career. And then I thought maybe one day I'll share the story in a book, and voila, I share the story in the book. And it comes in the middle of the book where there's a pivot where people are kind of lured into this book. They're like, okay, this is really interesting. This is funny. This is kind of different. And then boom, that's kind of hits you right in the middle of the book. And then you kind of see the other side of America, the side of America that no one talks about, the incarcerated, the effects on the incarcerated, poverty, bankruptcy. And hopefully I do that with some humor as well.
You definitely do. I know you do. And now I feel like going right to that chapter and reading it. I want to ask you today about your thoughts on things COVID. Tell folks who don't know about your daughter and how your perspective there matters when it comes to an infectious disease and how you guys are all doing.
So my daughter, for those of you guys who have listened to this podcast, you know she's a stage 4 cancer survivor. She just turned 5 last week, completely healthy. We went and got to the blood test. You know, she's doing fantastic, full liver transplant, but she still might be immunosuppressed. She is immunosuppressed. And so we, like the rest of you with kids under the age of 12, are waiting for the vaccines that hopefully will come out in September. Now, for people who are immunosuppressed or immunocompromised, just not like my kid, but many of you out there, we still don't know if those vaccines will provide the antibodies, right? So knowing that, you go, we have to be super careful. My wife, as you guys know, is a doctor. And so she's been on top of it. She goes, listen, this Delta variant, she's been saying it. It's going to be dangerous. She says people still aren't vaccinated. So that's why we always wear masks. My kids are pros. They wear masks. We avoid indoor packed places because of my daughter, but also because there are breakthroughs. Even though we're vaccinated, and which is like, you know, it's doing its job, there's still breakthroughs. You've heard, right? Like people who are fully vaccinated, they're still getting dog sick. Because
it's the kind of thing, by the way, just to, not to interrupt, but it's the kind of thing that you will hear about every single person who is vaccinated and gets COVID. You'll hear about all of them because it's such an aberration.
95%, it's fine, but 5% breakthrough.
Yeah, but you're going to hear about it a lot because it's the same reason you hear about a plane crashing. Like, it's not supposed to happen. So I think that what it does, though, is it creates, I think, an idea in people's mind that it's happening a lot more.
No. And so the flip side on that is what we've seen is as the Delta variant has now spread and cases have increased in 50 states, the COVID is now ravaging those who are unvaccinated. 99% of the deaths and hospitalization is against the unvaccinated. It's literally like biased towards the unvaccinated, which shows you that vaccines work. And the piece that I did that just came out in the Daily Beast a couple of days ago that got a lot of love and hate was talking about Tennessee's policy, how Tennessee, the Republicans in Tennessee, have literally stopped outreach to children, not just for COVID vaccines, ladies and gents, but all vaccines. Measles, mumps, hepatitis. And so they've made masks and vaccines. They've weaponized it as part of their culture war, as Delta is literally killing the unvaccinated. I mean, look at what's happening in Missouri. And if you look at really where it's happening, it's these red states, and Republicans are killing their own base to own the libs and hurting kids now to own the base, to rally the base. And that's why we're in a very dangerous situation where I worry, where people say, okay, yeah, you know, let them die. I've heard this a lot now. Yeah. You know, it's been a year and a half, and if you still want to be stupid, then social Darwinism, do your job. But then for people like me who got unvaccinated kids, like all of us under the age of 12, who are immunosuppressed, it still makes life dangerous, man, when people are unvaccinated in your country. Yep. So that's where we are.
And I think that's less of the case, people who are immunosuppressant, of my concern, than the people who are first responders, healthcare workers, which hopefully they're vaccinated, so they're safer than, say, your daughter is. But the bottom line is they're inundated and having to deal with, and there's a huge emotional issue there with sick people who are dying. I mean, like I just heard about, Missouri is one of the states where
that's right.
This is happening. There's a specific hospital. Imagine thinking you're over the worst of it as a doctor or nurse. Unfortunately, there's a frighteningly large percentage of them who are not vaccinated. But you think the worst is over, and then it comes back. Like your worst nightmare comes back because people aren't getting vaccinated. I feel
and the anger. I mean, these people were on the front lines. They died. They saw their colleagues dying. Yeah. I have friends who send me photos of the masks. I mean, the exhaustion. It's like trauma. It's like they literally still have trauma. And to know that we're going to still be facing so much death just because so many people are deliberately misinformed. What gives me like anger is that now today, as we're recording this in the morning, Fox News had a doctor saying, hey, everyone, get vaccinated. Why? Because they just saw the stock market dip due to Delta variant. And that's what made Fox News change its tune, at least in the morning. But meanwhile, all these mother effers, all the hosts are vaccinated. Rupert Murdoch was one of the first people to get vaccinated. Yeah. And Tucker Carlson, all these people on their show are promoting vaccine hesitancy and disinformation to rally their base. I mean, that's what gets me rage. I'd respect you if you had the courage of your convictions and said, I don't believe in vaccines. I didn't get vaccinated. But all these people got vaccinated and are promoting disinformation. That level of hypocrisy is just it's exquisite and infuriating at the same time.
Do you have time to talk about your critical race theory piece? You got to go.
No, let's do it.
The right's critical race theory panic is pure projection. You write they're ginning up a fake controversy in order to distract from the GOP's actual endgame of minority rule and a full-throated and violent embrace of white supremacy. This is definitely the thing that has upset me the most. It's come to my town. It's got me thinking about running for some kind of local office to just be the change I want to see, because we need white people and white men actually to say the right thing on these issues. And it's terrifying. I mean, they're talking about not teaching. This is bled into everything, just general history, not teaching about Dr. King, not teaching about the civil rights movement, not
suffrage rights, women's rights. It's now expanded. If you look what's happening in Texas.
I don't think we should teach about women's rights, personally.
Them folks with lady parts voting.
I think they know.
They know their place.
Wait, what are you talking about? I mean, I haven't heard anything like that. They're really saying like,
So what you're talking about, right? The most expansive type of ban in Texas, that would mean that if no one wants to teach, like literally under their definition, you don't have to teach Martin Luther King. You don't have to teach his speeches. You don't have to teach about women's rights. You don't have to teach about the suffragists. That all is included in this huge net that they have now deployed under the guise of fighting CRT to literally rewrite history and embark on a type of Stalinism where they're purging history and purging teaching our history, which is not in sync with what the minority party wants. I mean, that's where we're at, man. That's where Texas is leading us. And Tennessee, again, which is oftentimes a laboratory for the most extreme measures that Republicans want to impart on America, has also been one of the few states to ban CRT. So they're banning CRT, but they do have, by the way, permitless carry as of July 1. So you can carry a gun and kill as many kids as you want, but there's not going to be vaccine outreach to kids. There's going to be banning of CRT. And let's not forget that Tennessee was also the laboratory for the anti-Sharia measures 10 years ago that they tried to, again, mainstream. And the playbook that they used, the right wing used for the anti-Sharia measures, is the exact same playbook that they're using for CRT at a local and national level. And my state, Virginia, right now, Loudoun County, is ground zero for anti-CRT measures. It's happening right now in the schools where the activists are merging with the politicians, are merging with terrified conservative parents, and voila, fast forward a month, it's been successful, and it's going to be a laboratory to literally copy paste in schools all across the country.
I swear to God, if you pronounce laboratory one more time, I'm going to jump through the screen and fight you.
You know what? I always used to say laboratory, but then I friggin' saw some documentary, I think, with some Brits saying laboratory, and it's been stuck in my brain. Well, so thank you. 2 points for you.
I'm getting email from people that haven't even heard this yet.
In your brain.
That are offended.
Because of the microchip that's installed in your head thanks to the vaccine.
Thanks to the vaccine, a fifth of Americans believe that. Is that right?
20%, according to the latest poll, that think that there is going to be a microchip installed by Biden if they take the vaccine, and they heard about it in the smartphone that they use, where they voluntarily expose their location.
Yeah. Well, it's they don't have at least to their credit, they don't have 5G phones. They would never.
Yeah, they should go back to flip phones.
Oh boy.
This is dangerous stuff, man. We laugh about it, but this is...
Oh, we have to. But it is... Yeah, no, I mean, what you say about Loudoun County being ground zero, I think it's spread. It's everywhere. It's everywhere now. It's really, really terrifying how people are conflating, history with critical race theory, and how the vast majority of high school teachers have no idea what critical race theory is. They teach history.
Can I tell you something that, I want to write about this. It's something that you just reminded me. 5 years ago, I was asked to go to a Virginia high school, right? And it was like a private high school, and they asked me just to address the teachers. And we're talking about the rise of Trumpism and racism and Islamophobia. This was like 2016. And one of the teachers raised their hand and said, how will I be able to teach history if a third of my class says, I don't buy that, or my parents don't believe that? How can I be able to teach slavery? How can I talk about civil rights? And I thought about that, and that was so sobering to me. And voila, look, here we are. Yeah. Where teachers literally can't do their job because you'll have about half of the parents say this is CRT.
That's why I think people do really have to do everything they can. And this is, we always talk about what you can do in terms of activism and participation. And, you don't have to run for local office. You should consider it, but you should really not be thinking so much about the national politics picture.
I agree.
really getting involved in your local town. And the thing that I've learned a lot of is there's already organizations. They already exist, and they're not hard to find in your local community of great people wanting to make good changes and just get on board with these already existing organizations that have come up over the past few years.
It's very important because every time I've been asked to give a speech the last 4 or 5 years, they always say what to do. I always come up with like a top 10 list. The first thing I always say is local, local, local.
Yeah.
Everything happens at the local level. There's no reason why you can't be on part of the school board. And if you don't push back and you cede the ground, voila. That's the reason why the anti-Sharia conspiracy, which was complete BS, the anti-Sharia bill, like a problem in search of a solution. What did they say? A solution in search of a problem, right? It might have been just as useful as the anti-Bigfoot or the anti-unicorn bill, but it became a galvanizing force right before the 2010 midterms and the 2012 midterms, led to Islamophobia, led to anti-Sharia bills. The left sat on it, didn't do anything to respond. Voila, CRT, man, they've got a leg up on us. And I think if you don't take this seriously at a local level, they're going to come after all of your teachers. This is what's happening. And I feel like the people who are listening right now, you need to reach out and support your local teachers and your local schools. Like, you need to be there right now and say, we're going to give funding, we're going to show up, we're going to run for office, we're going to do anything that it takes to make sure that we do not have a whitewashing of U.S. history at this moment where we're also having a racial reckoning.
Great advice. Great to talk to you. Sorry it's been so long. That's 100% on me. Sorry, I was afraid of you.
No, man. Next time, I know how busy you are, so I was not offended at all. I felt bad that I actually asked you to read it, and I'm going to send you a physical copy of the book, and I want you to really let me know if you like it. If you don't like it, let me know also.
I already tell you I love it. Thank you very much, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, man. I'll see you next week.